Hello and welcome to the June 18th edition of the Bub Report. Last Friday, as air traffic controllers at the Maurice Bishop International Airport were preparing to guide two major commercial airplanes into the airport, a mayday call was signaled. At approximately 3:15 p.m., VHF 16 North Coast Radio in Trinidad and Tobago reported the Mayday call, which led to the aircraft's downing 14 miles southwest of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. The single-engine Piper aircraft registered to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela had two souls on board, the pilot and a passenger. The aircraft was en route to Grenada. The small aircraft subsequently lost radio contact with the air traffic controllers after it went down, which led to a massive search and subsequent rescue of the aircraft occupants by the Grenada Coast Guard.
It was so fast, I really don't know what the problem was with the engine. And my only thing was try to make it in the water and not kill myself. I just wanted to glide and try to hit the water as clean as possible. I was able to do that. Myself and the passenger were not hurt, harmed, or anything. We just grabbed the raft, got on the raft, and just started praying. And I noticed the tower, we had an emergency, and tower communicated to me that they were going to immediately call the Coast Guard. And if it wasn't for the Coast Guard, I wouldn't be telling you the story right now.
With that service,
they were extremely fast, professional, serious,
provide you with that service,
and kind. I have no word for them. And for the rest of my life, I owe my life to them. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Coast Guard of Grenada, that's for sure. Because I thought we were going to spend there, just like in the movies, spend weeks and weeks in the middle of the ocean and just die. But the Coast Guard rescued us.
This week, we hear from some of the players involved in the miraculous rescue, which saved lives and limbs. While many children in the Caribbean are raised in single-parent homes by their mothers, there are many dads who break the cycle. Stereotypes of black men as irresponsible or uninvolved abound, largely due to researchers building on the absence demographic. Drawing their samples from among inner-city socially excluded communities, failing to take age and social demographic into account, failing to acknowledge high levels of involvement by black fathers who do not live with their children full-time, and ignoring substantial involvement with children by uncles, grandfathers, and other male family members. As we celebrate Father's Day, our spotlight guest, Brian Samuel, explains how his father defied that stereotype. In Brian Samuel's Song for My Father, A West Indian Journey, he tells a different narrative of the West Indian father. Brian says about his father, quote, "He did possess some saintly qualities, chiefly his determination to raise his children on his own, giving us a broad range of experiences along the way. He had his failings, of course. Who doesn't? He was a product of his time, and in some ways, ahead of his time. Anti-colonialist in politics, colonialist in culture, he instilled in us a very strong sense that we were A, West Indian, and B, Black. He had a passion for learning, a passion sadly partially fulfilled," unquote. Here now is our host, Dr. Kellon Bub, with this week's installment of the Bub Report. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to this week's installment of the Bub Report. And for our editorial this week, we will be paying tribute to the fathers of the nation and, of course, by extension, the fathers of the diaspora. Now, in the United States, Father's Day was officially celebrated for the first time on the 19th of June, 1910, in Washington State, after a Spokane woman named Sandra Smart Dodd, one of the 6 children raised by a widower, wanted to establish the male equivalent to Mother's Day. She approached local churches, the YMCA, shopkeepers, and government officials to encourage support for her idea. Today, Father's Day is a major American and world holiday, celebrated on the third Sunday in June of every year. The National Retail Federation, for example, in the United States, reports that the average American will spend $148.58 this Father's Day, and that total spending nationwide will exceed over $17 billion in 2023. Nearly half of all people surveyed indicated that they plan to give clothing as a Father's Day gift. However, the real impact of Father's Day goes beyond greeting cards, neckties, and golf shirts. It's about celebrating the enduring legacy of fathers and the power they have to shape the lives of their sons and daughters. Changing role of fathers. Now, the role of the father in American and global society is constantly evolving. The Pew Research Center, for example, in the United States, reports that more dads are staying home to care for their kids than ever before. The percentage of fathers who are stay at home dads increased from 4% in 1989 to 7% in 2016. That percentage has likely inched up even higher as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which left many American dads without jobs. The Pew Research Center also reports that it's becoming less common for dads to be the family's sole breadwinner. In 1970, fathers were the sole worker in nearly half of all American families. As of 2017, this percentage had decreased by nearly half. Couples in dual income families now comprise the majority of two-parent family households with children. At the same time, dads are significantly more involved in childcare than they were in the past. In 2016, fathers reporting spending an average of 8 hours a week on childcare, which is nearly 3 times the total in 1965, but still significantly less than the 14 hours a week that the average American mother devotes to childcare. An enduring legacy, of course, of fathers is that by any measure, fathers have the ability to serve as important role models for sons and daughters and to make a lasting impact on the lives of their children. The relationship between father and child affects the healthy development of that child on a variety of levels, from language acquisition and cognition to physical and emotional development. Scientific studies have shown that fathers who care for, nurture, and play with their babies raise children with higher IQs and stronger language and cognitive skills. In the end, being a father offers the opportunity to connect, inspire, and have an impact beyond this mortal coil. As author and motivational speaker Leo Buscaglia observed, quote, if there is any immorality or any immortality rather to be had among us human beings, it certainly only is the love that we leave behind. Fathers like mine don't ever die, unquote. Being a parent is one of life's toughest jobs. On this day, we recognize all fathers who care about their children and inspire them to reach their fullest potential. And at this time, I am happy to be joined by a father, Mr. Brian Samuel. Brian, welcome to the Bub Report and happy Father's and Grandfather's Day to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I like the way you say author, father, and grandfather. I'll take all three of those. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, normally when you come here, we have very heavy and deep conversations around the issues affecting the national development of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. But today we're going to have a slightly lighter and more personal conversation. First of all, I never knew you were a son of St. David's, and perhaps that should explain the passion and the fire you have in your belly. As a fellow St. Davidian, it's something that I share as well, that commonality. And you're also related to Lingham Samuel, a very good friend of mine.
Yep. Yep.
And his daughter Roxanne. His daughter Roxanne and I went to school together. Now, Brian, let us begin with, of course, you're here to talk about your book. But before we get into it, what does the family have planned for you on this Father's Day?
That's a very good question. What have you got planned for me? I don't know. I will see. We will see. All I want is love and best wishes and hugs. That's all I want.
Love and best wishes. That's important. That's important. Now, Brian, in your book, you speak about your dad in a very different way, because of course your dad was the one who raised you and your siblings as a single parent. Yes.
Correct.
So let us talk about how he rose to the challenge of being a single parent following your mom's decision to walk out of your lives at a very young age. Now, in the text, you state, quote, to say our father was unprepared is putting it mildly. He was in a state of shock, for he had no inkling of his pending abandonment by his wife of 10 years. But despite his shock, there was only one thing he would never do: abandon his sons, unquote.
Correct. And
Talk to us about that.
it was a very difficult position. This is 1960. Men and fathers and husbands weren't exactly, raisers of children. They didn't raise the children. The mother raises the children. The father just, goes and works and come home and plays with the children every now and again. So all of a sudden, I was 6, and Jerry and Tom. Sorry, my brothers are called Tom and Jerry.
I saw that as well. That was an interesting. We'll talk about that.
Yes, I was 6, and Tom and Jerry was 9 and 10, and she just disappeared. One day we were living in Trinidad and we went to pick her up. She worked at Radio Guardian. She was a host on a radio show, a daily radio show called Neighbor Nell. And every day we'd pick her up, and one day she wasn't there. And, our father came back out looking puzzled, and was puzzled for, weeks and months. And we never heard, it's in those days, you don't tell children, you don't sit down and have a family conference, like we may do now. Mom's gone away for a while, and a while turned into a longer while, and that was the end of it. And we didn't see her for 15 years.
Yeah.
So he decided, he had a very good job in Trinidad. He was the head of technical training at TN Tech, a utility. We drove a nice car, MG Magnet, and so on. But in 1960, he decided, because he went to England during the war. When he was 19 years old, he went to England in 1942, which is crazy. During the middle of the Blitz and so on. And he worked building Lancaster bombers in Manchester. So he had already spent 8 or 10 years in England in the war and after the war. Then he came back to Grenada, Trinidad, and so on. And I think he decided that he just had enough of, there were too many ghosts of his, in the past. He's living in Trinidad. His wife's just left. I think and so he decided to go back to England. So he did abandon us for a while, for 6 months. He abandoned us to the care of our Auntie Lorena in Penmonta, and those were wonderful 6 months, because 3 boys and an old aunt, who can't really control us. So we had a ball, and 6 months later he sent for us, and we went to England. So in 1960.
Now, do you get a sense that race had anything to do with your mom's decision to leave when she did? I mean, but they were married for 10 years, so I can't imagine that race, because your mom is of, I believe, the text says Scottish ancestry, yes, of Scottish. She's Scottish. So
yeah.
Do you believe that had anything to do with it?
I don't think so. I mean, when they got together, when they met and married in 1949, I mean, that's my grandchild.
And there is your granddaughter, yes.
They met and they got married in 1949, which, that literally turned heads. Like, wow, look at that, a black man and a white woman. It didn't happen,
It did not happen back then, yeah.
And when she came to the West Indies, I think what got to her head was being a white woman in the West Indies. all of a sudden. And also the thing about working on the radio, and she's a bit of a celebrity, as they say in Jamaica. And I think that kind of got to her head. And, just being an ordinary mother and, just all of a sudden didn't seem very glamorous anymore. And off she went looking for this glamorous life and self-fulfillment and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if she found it. I don't think so.
Right. Now, let us talk about, so you go on in the book, you talk about the places that shaped your father, and the places that in turn shaped you as well. Jamaica, and in the text you talk about Jamaica as that place where your self-esteem blossom as a sixth form student. Really amazing there, which was a total a contrast to the experience you had in London. Of course, given the racial dynamics that occurred there, I can understand why perhaps that occurred. But you also lived in Trinidad, as you just intimated, Guyana, the United Kingdom. I mean, you and your dad moved around a lot.
Yeah, I inherited my nomadism from him. By the time when I moved to Jamaica, I just turned 18, and that was the 6th country I'd lived in, 2 of them twice. And since then, I've lived in 10 countries. When I moved back to Grenada 2 years ago, it was the 22nd time I'd moved country in my 69 years. So I don't want to move anywhere. I'm done. But my father moved around a lot. Some of it was good. Some of it wasn't so good. I mean, when we went to England, my life turned to hell. Just like, because we grew up as kids in Grenada and Trinidad, we didn't even know what race meant. We didn't really know what that was. There was a white kid who lived next door. There was black kids, Indian kids. Nobody ever thought of it. Then I go to England, and there's 2 things that they're asking me. A, chocolate face, and did you live in trees and wear grass skirts in England? And B, where's your mom? And that question, like, I don't know where she is. We had no idea where she was, and is she dead? No, she's not dead. I don't know where she is. So,
and that question of your mom came up a lot, yes?
Yeah, it's a nagging presence as you go along. I mean, it doesn't affect you day to day, but as you get older, and I remember our father one time saying, "Write a letter to your mother, boys." What do I say, dear mom, mother? What do I say? I am fine. I hope you are fine. So she was a complete non-presence from the age of 6 onwards. And our father, when I say he was in a state of shock, he wasn't exactly prepared for single parent and father and motherhood together, all rolled up in one. So he was a terrible cook. I mean, he could ruin a fried egg, let alone dinner. And,
was he able to boil water at least?
Just about, but
barely.
And things like our personal hygiene and cleanliness, he'd just say, "Boys, keep clean," but he wouldn't go into details about how it's done. So it was kind of, and we were latchkey kids. We were growing up in the streets of London. He was teaching in the day, he was a teacher. And he also went to night school in the evenings, and he also sold World Book Encyclopedia in the evening. So we spent a lot of time on our own, in London.
Now, you describe London as the arse end of London. Is there a specific reason for that? I mean, and let us go into place again, London. Of course, when I think of London, when I think of West Indians in the United Kingdom, the places that comes to mind are Brixton, East London, of course, Bristol comes to mind as well. Notting Hill, of course, and the founding of the Notting Hill Carnival there, which, by the way, had some very interesting origins. It did not come from a place of celebration, but because of the tensions of race that existed there. What was it like growing up in as a Black West Indian growing up in London among people who look like us, among the immigrant community?
Yeah, it was. I didn't like it. I mean, how could you like Lewisham after coming from Pedmonton, where you're eating mango and stoning, lizards and all kind of thing? We had a ball. All of a sudden, it's freezing cold. The only heating in this apartment or flat that we moved into was coal. Coal. You have to light the coal fire. You know, it's freezing cold, something we never appreciated before. And like I said, you had issues at
Yeah.
school, you know, so it was a bit of a, you know, it toughened you up, that's for sure. You couldn't cry too much. You had to kind of like just get along with it. But yeah, so England was tough in those early days. It wasn't any picnic. But you know, as you get older, you kind of learn how to navigate. You choose your friends. You know, I was always I went to 5 high schools in 3 countries. I went to 3 high schools in England, 1 in America, 1 in Jamaica. And we get to the Jamaica one in a minute.
Yes.
But in high schools in England, you know, usually I go into a new classroom and there's one other black kid, one other Indian kid, and that's it. And then by lunchtime, all 3 of us are fast friends. And so you get to navigate and you get to, you know, choose your way and so on. It didn't help that I was a small kid because my birthday was the end of July. So I'm always the youngest and smallest in the class, which didn't stop me from getting into fights, which I usually lost.
Right. So let us talk about that high school experience, and of course, those teenage years are very formative years. Boys usually experience outside of puberty, those changes occur, hormones raging and all of that. But those are also very critical years for young men. I mean, I remember my teenage years, and I remember the role that some of the men in my life played, because you know I also experienced an absent father, but there were other men in my life who stepped in that breach. What role did your father play during those years to sort of get you really properly adjusted for the rest of your life and set you up for the success that you eventually accomplished?
Well, of course, a huge role because he was father, mother, and aunt and uncle and everything rolled up into one. And also what he would do is, in addition to what we learned at school, he would take us on what, you know, we could only call experiences. You know, he would get the cheapest seats at the West End Theatre, what they call the nosebleed seats, way up in the top where you need the little binoculars. And he'd take us to see West End plays. He'd take us to the British Museum, the Natural History Museum, the Tate Gallery, took us hiking, he even took us to a male nudist colony once, which was very weird. But, you know, he took us, when we went to Chicago, he took us to a Baptist Holy Roller Church where, you know, women are falling around and so on. And all of these experiences that, you know, I don't think, you know, the typical 15, 16-year-old kid would be, you know, be having, but it certainly gave us an unusual and kind of different upbringing. And that, you know, in terms of education, there's another counter narrative in the book. The first counter narrative is the role of the father, and the second one is the role of its schools. People send their children and they take their children to England and America so that children can get a better education. The worst education I ever got was in England. You know, my teachers, Mr. Valkenburg in 3rd form at St. Thomas's RC School, his favorite word was moron. Samuel, boy, you're a moron. Yeah, that's the one word I remember him saying. You know, 5th form, careers day, you know, your careers master. Right, Samuel, what do you want to be? Well, sir, I'd like to be a lawyer. Don't be stupid, boy. You can't be a lawyer. Now, how about being a carpenter? Good idea. You know, so they dumb you down, you know. And between lower 6th and upper 6th, my dad did a crazy thing. You know, he got married. He had gotten married by that time to my stepmother, Joan Samuel. Hi, Joan. And, you know, age 18, Dad, Joan, and I moved from England to Jamaica. And I was like, are you kidding me? Not another move? You know, because I was just getting comfortable in England. I had hair like this. You know, I was a hippie and trying to grow a little beard. And, you know,
and that was and that was England in we're talking here the 70s, was it?
70,
yeah, and at that time, you know, there was the emergent left in England. There was a lot happening in terms of activism and Black Power, and you know, yes, absolutely,
protests and so on and so on. Yeah. So there was a lot happening, and I was 18, just getting into the swing of things. Yeah, I'm getting to be, you know, but school-wise, I was dragging my feet. I was, you know, going nowhere. I would never have passed anything because, at school, my grades were useless because the teachers kind of tell you you're useless. And then we went to Jamaica. And then in my first day in Jamaica school, I thought, God, here we are, yet another new school, yet another new country. And when I was leaving England, I stood next to this guy. I'm standing next to this white guy with round glasses, and he's got long hair. And I'm looking at him, and he looks familiar. He looks like John Lennon and Yoko Ono standing next to him. And I'm standing next to John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And he starts to talk to me and chat to me and say, hey, man, I'm leaving England for good. And at that time, he was the biggest thing since, in the world.
Oh, yeah.
My first day in school, I meet two Jamaican guys, and I said, who I was standing and talking to at the airport in London? John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And he says, who them? I was like, oh, geez, where have I come to? But Jamaica transformed me because the school that I went to, Excelsior, the best. The teachers there told me I'm bright. They told me I'm not stupid. They told me I can do anything else. I was inspired. In 1 year, I went from a underachieving, dumbed down Windrush kid to all of a sudden passing my A levels. And I remember when I was at university thinking, what am I doing here? That would never have happened in England. And it's all due to that 1 year at Excelsior with those wonderful teachers who really just, got the best out of me.
Mm-hmm. And I saw that you went back to Jamaica. You had some wonderful media appearances there, which I happened to tune into. Did you have a chance to visit?
I did.
If some of your old teachers are alive, if you have a chance to visit
they're
them,
not alive anymore, sadly. But I went back to Excelsior and I spoke to the students at Excelsior, and I really enjoyed doing that. And I was trying to tell them, don't let anybody tell you what you can't do, and that was very nice. And I did a couple of interviews as well about.
Yeah, no, that's, I tell you, that male mentorship is so important. And I'm really glad that your father shared. But it would appear as if your father was also an avid diarist. He journaled everything, and so after he died in 1979, you said you discovered the journals. He had journals, photos, letters, and how did these this collection of items really informed the tone and tenor of the book that you wrote?
It's a treasure trove. It's absolute. I found two treasures. One is, I'm just looking at it over there, the box, the white box, where he kept all of his, documents, letters, diaries, photographs, negatives, So I got all the negatives developed and wow, a treasure trove of old black and white pictures. And he kept this box. And when he died in 1975, I carried this box all over the world with me. And I never really looked into it, because it's diaries and it's letters and it's personal things from my father. And when I decided to write the book or to finish the book, then I dived into the box and my wife will tell you, tears, laughter, tears, and just amazing that what came out of those old yellowed pages. And that's how I happened to write the book, because in addition to that, I also found my grandfather's diary. Now, this is fascinating because my grandfather, Nathan Dennis Samuel, ND as everybody called him, lived in Montrose in Piedmont. He was what as defined in his documents, in his deeds and so on, as a peasant proprietor. That's what he was. That was his classification, usually with a black in front of that. So he had built up a small estate, Montrose, and he kept a diary. And in this diary, he would record that he sold 2,108 pounds of polished cocoa at, it's 13 shillings and 12 pence and so on per pound equals so and so, less a discount of so and so. But he would also record the events of the day. He would record what was happening in his family, a tragic event with the death of his son. That's my cousin Lingham's grandfather, Lingham. And he also recorded what was happening in Grenada. Now, Grenada, as you know, in 1950 was a very, very, very violent time with the emergence of a certain Mr. Gary.
And the labor movement and those strikes and the
movement,
disturbances. Yeah.
I read days, and
Yeah.
in his diary, he records how 6,000 people were at a meeting with this rascal Gary, and how Gary's men, burned down a bucan and, killed cows in the neighborhood and so on, and just recording in very precise, clipped language with no emotion what was happening in the day. So that was a very interesting find. So there's a lot of history in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. In those diaries, did you get a sense of your father's own thought process around raising his boys, raising his children as a single father? Did he give any hint as to whether or not he was having challenges, the joys, or all of the varying emotions that would come with that?
Not much. He would record the times in which he lived. Like when we went to America in 66, 67, he went to a race riot in Cicero and recorded it all. As he said, he spectated at the race riot. And he recorded a very pithy, sort of humorous kind of language about, how the natives are so fierce and so on and so forth. And he would say that, me, a Negro, by way of London, and my 3 children have had nothing but friendliness from the natives, who are all white, of course, And he said, but I wonder, though, what they would feel if I tried to buy the house next door. Is it really just friendliness, or is it really, is there something more? So he would always record these events. And he was the one thing that we get from him about raising us and the impact of our mother's loss on us and what he was doing was when he went to America for a year, 66, 67, on an exchange teachers thing. And he tried to palm us off, the 3 of us, to a posh boarding school down in Ramsgate. And he wanted to get scholarships. So he took us all down there, polished us up, and, put ties on and so on. And we thank God we didn't get the scholarships. But in the letter to the school, he says, and it goes something like this: all of my 3 sons have been negatively affected by the abandonment of their mother. Jerry, the oldest, is aloof and will not talk to me. Tommy, the middle boy, is rebellious and sort of aggressive. And Brian, the younger one, clings to me overmuch. And that's it. That's all 3 of us in a nutshell right there.
Mm-hmm.
My father wasn't a saint. He wasn't a saint. He made his mistakes, and particularly with the difference in Tom, Jerry, and me. Jerry was the first and Tom was the second, and he was a product of his time. He beat his children like every West Indian would beat their children. To excess, yes. But I think that by the time I came along being the youngest, he kind of like softened his approach, Like the first time, Tom, the middle brother, of course, he's the wild one. I call Tom and Jerry the wild one and the mild one. The first time Tom stayed out all night, aged like 17, Dad went mad. The first time I stayed out all night long, 3 or 4 years later, he said, you should have called. I was worried. So I benefited from his gaining experience. So you could say at the cost of Tom and Jerry. Tom used to say, I blunted Dad for you, you ingrate.
But you say that, your dad was not perfect. And of course, all humans have failings. And that was one of the things that stood out for me and resonated for me in the book, that you also highlighted those vulnerabilities, which as Caribbean men, we tend not to want to do. Yes. So can you talk about being vulnerable in your book? How do you highlight the theme of vulnerability throughout?
It took a long time. This book took 10 years plus to get from beginning to end. But the last 2 or 3 years was the hardest part, where I had done all the stories, Yeah. There's a lot of fun in this book. People will say there are really some funny episodes. I wrote all the funny stuff. I wrote all the descriptive stuff. I wrote the when we went here, we went there, we were there, we were there. What I didn't write was the emotional stuff. What really did my mother's abandonment mean? And then when we found our mother later, I have to tell you this one. When I don't want to, spoil the plot, but
because I read that too. Yeah. So no spoilers.
When
for example, Nicole,
stood in front of our mother's desk 15 years after she'd walked away in the Bahamas, And she looked up at us. And I'm 22 and Tom's 25. And she says, "Who are you? What do you want?" And we said, "Are you Mrs. Nelline Darville?" "Yes, yes. Who are you? What do you want?" Did you marry to Mr. Samuel?" "Yes. What do you want?" And we just stood there savoring the moment. And then Tom said, "We're Tom and Brian, your sons." And so on and so on. But, you can't recreate 15 years of abandonment. And again, things went on, which I don't want to go into now, but it certainly was a plot twister in finding out about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and viewers and listeners, please get the book. It's on Amazon. That's why I purchased my copy. And it's a riveting read, I have to say. And as a student of history, I learned so much, especially about that Windrush era there, which I you taught me a lot. So I encourage you, viewers and listeners, to get a copy of the book. But Brian, two final things we want to discuss. The first one is, there is this enduring perennial stereotype about absent fathers in the Black community, right? Absent fathers. And normally, whenever we have conversations around fathers, the narrative is always, that the father is deadbeat. It's around child support and it's around all of these things. To me, what your book attempted to highlight was a different narrative, and there are many counter narratives to this, really, in respect of the fathers who are present in the lives of their children, and your dad was one of those. But there are many other stories like that. Perhaps some of them actually are not highlighted. They go unnoticed, but they are there in our communities.
And
I want you to flesh that out.
I like the statistics that you started this segment of the show with, showing that fathers are now more involved with their children, especially Black West Indian fathers who are now staying there and playing with their children and so on. And you know what I don't understand? I love my children. I love playing with them when they were 1 year old. When my grandchild is here, I love having her with me. When they're 2 years, 3 years, 4 years old, it's fun. It's so much fun to have children who are, they round out your life. I couldn't imagine not wanting to be with my children. I just couldn't imagine. It's so easy to do and so much fun and pleasure to do. Why would you not do it? Why would fathers just have nothing to do with their children? I just do not get it. And I just want to say to young fathers in particular, you're missing out on a huge part of your life and their lives, because they are infinitely richer by the involvement of the father and the mother. My own children, I laugh at them. I said, you're lucky. You have the most beautiful mother in the world, right? And she spoils them and she cooks for them and so on. I never had all that. I said, you got it perfect. And, you could see, me, Tom, and Jerry were all affected by the abandonment of our mother. Sons will be affected by the abandonment of their father. You need both. And that's the kind of message that I try to live by and get across in the book.
And the impact of a father being in the lives of their children, can you flesh that out? And the importance of a father figure, a male figure in the lives of children, especially for Black boys.
Yeah, I learned so much from the example of our father, for good and otherwise. I learned how to be a great father and perhaps how to be a little bit more mellow. I love the line, with every mistake we must surely be learning, by George Harrison. Yeah. And with every mistake we must learn. So in every generation we must grow. I'm not going to compare myself to my father, but I would like to think that I take on the best of his and maybe even add to that. And that's what the generations do. We become wiser, with the experience of our fathers and our grandfathers. So fortunately, I had a good father to follow. I didn't have a mother, but my father did his best to make up for that.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to young fathers? For example, one of the producers of this program, Kitaka Mawuto, he's a new father. Happy Father's Day, Kitaka. I will be calling you later.
Father's Day,
I actually have a gift for you. And my godson, Kitaka, I haven't seen my godson on camera. So you and I would have a talk. But, I'll be calling you shortly. What advice would you give to young fathers, especially in this era, when so much is evolving? There is so much change, so much social change. Um, and of course, the caveat here is that there isn't necessarily a life manual that parents can go to, a parenting manual that you can go to. Yes, a
Yeah.
lot of it. Sometimes you have to adjust and evolve on the fly. But let
Mm.
us talk about advice you would give finally to young fathers as a father yourself.
Well, boy, parenting is a never-ending job, and it changes all the time. To be honest, I don't know what I'd do if I had a 10-year-old now who come home and say, Daddy, I want to be they. And all of these new things and social media and all these influences that are bombarding all of these kids. But the
Yeah.
biggest influence is you. The biggest influence is your father and your mother and your aunts and your uncles and your immediate family. Be there for your kids. It's fun. It's not a chore. It's not something that you feel that you have to do because you made this child. Yes, you made this child. You may not even have wanted this child, but the child is there, and you can't blame the child for what you did or you and her mother did. However that child got to be there, the child is there. It's not difficult. It is fun. It is really. And the older they get, the more close you can get to them, the more you can shape them and talk to them, and you see them grow. And they need you. They really do need you. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us get to some viewer comments here. And Cassandra, well, let's begin with Jennifer. Good morning, Jennifer. Jennifer is an avid viewer of the show. Jennifer says, please don't give away too much.
I
I've
won't.
only read the first chapter. Yes, Jennifer, I really tried not to, because I'm telling you, it's a great read. So we have that. Let's go on to Cassandra Mitchell. Hello, Cassandra. Cassandra is saying abandoned. Curious to know why he used that word, if he's willing to share.
Yeah, that's what she did. I mean, a lot of people sometimes are shocked about the way I speak about my mother.
Mhm.
But I say, and a lot of mothers themselves will say, if you turn the roles around, if it was my father who did what my mother did and my mother who did what my father did, nobody would have anything to say if I cuss my dad, right? I say my dad was a deadbeat dad and he was useless and he wasn't part of my life. But thank God I had my mother. That's the narrative. But if you switch it around, all of a sudden you're not supposed to say things like that about your mother. And when I wrote the book, and I want to give a shout out to Ian Randall, publishing from Jamaica, he actually changed the title of the book and focused it. But at the end, when I give some comments, some sort of closing comments about my father and my mother, of course, some of the comments about my mother may not have been entirely charitable. And he said, you need to cut your mom some slack. When he gave it around to the ladies in his office who read it, they said, no, he doesn't. She doesn't deserve it. So, I call it like it is.
Mhm. I feel the same way about you, about that. If your parents were not there, they were not there. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is no need to be politically correct about it, in my view. And sometimes you say, the folks will say, well, they brought you into the world, they helped to contribute, and that. Okay, well,
It's more than
that does.
it's more than
It's more than
biology.
that. It's
You know
more
what
than that.
amazed me about our mother is that she never
Yeah.
looked back. She knew where we were. She knew how to contact us. So our father and mother were talking about divorce, and they were in comms with each other. So she could have said, like, in '66 when we went to America, he went down to Nassau to see her. I think he tried to maybe get her back, or at least get some financial, input. He got neither. But when he
Right.
went back, he said, well, I'm going to see, Tom, Jerry, and Brian. Do you want to give them a letter or something? No, it's okay. No. Never saw her, never had a photograph, never anything. And that, to me, is just unimaginable.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. Let's get to some other viewer comments here. Richard is saying, I knew Lewisham. I was there last year.
I bet they didn't have to.
Um,
No.
okay. We have another comment here from Nicole James Phillip. He's saying, well, Mr. Samuel, you emerged successfully from your youth. What a story, sad on some fronts.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Yeah. Sonia Lessie. Hello, Sonia. Good morning to you. It's good seeing you here on the Bub Report. I hope we can meet in New York sometime whenever I'm in Brooklyn again. I read the sample and ordered the book on Amazon, awaiting my copy.
Could I just say one thing to you,
Yeah.
Kellon, and to
Yes.
that lady and everybody else who orders from Amazon? Could you please do a review and a rating on Amazon, because that really feeds the algorithm and gets it higher up the Amazon ladder or whatever. So just please do a review and rating when you're done.
Okay. And Margaret is asking if the book is available on Kindle.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. $9.99.
So, Margaret, it is available on Kindle for $9.99. Is that pounds or
It's in
US
pounds.
dollars?
I think it's pounds in England and dollars in the States. I'm really not quite sure.
Okay. All right. We have a Richard Holston saying happy
Thank
Father's
you,
Day, Mr. Samuel. Jennifer saying, although she wasn't present in your life and you missed her, however, do you think that you might not have had the same experience?
She wasn't. However, do you think that you might not have had? You mean if she was in my life?
If she was in my life, I think perhaps that's what Jennifer.
Yeah, of course. Our whole path of our lives would have been entirely different. And at this point, I have to give a shout out to Joan, my stepmother. She had a hard job. She came into a family of 3 boys. I was the youngest. I was just a day shy of 17, and they were 19 and 18, 19, and 20. You're going to go into a family that has been a family of 4 men for 15 years or 13 years and try and exert some order on 3 teenage boys. It was difficult. And, we all had our mother issues, and she was, a very warm and, wise woman. And she really helped me a lot in developing my education and so on and so forth. But I still suffered from these mommy issues. Ask my wife. She'll tell you how my mother affected my personality.
Okay, so Cassandra saying, no, the question in regards to his father abandoning them in the care of your aunt. I think
well, I used the word abandon just, not seriously. It was 6 months.
Yeah.
We went to Grenada for 6 months while he took the ship on doing that. And what we have to realize is how expensive it was to go to England.
Mm-hmm.
There were him, the 3 of us, and our Auntie Phyllis. That's 5 tickets that he paid for to go to England. Each ticket in those days, our ticket on the Southern Cross was £75. His monthly salary as a teacher was £95. So within 6 months, he brought 5 people, including himself, and he must have got a loan. I don't know how he did it. He bought a house in 1963 in Harrow. Again, how he did all that on a single parent family and a teacher's salary. Well, we know how he did it because he was a financial juggler. He had all these balls in the air, and sometimes, North Thames Gas Board had him in court for unpaid bills, and Sainsbury's and Selfridges and, all of these things. So he really struggled to put food on the table in a literal sense, even though the food may have tasted horrible.
Mm-hmm. Now, back in the day, just as a matter of detail for me, of interest for me, did you go to England by boat, or at that time was there air traffic? Airplanes flying?
We went on. We were the liners. We were last of the luxury. Well, I wouldn't say luxury. Last of the line. We went on a ship called the Southern Cross. We went from Trinidad. We actually flew to Trinidad. We left Grenada and flew to Trinidad, and this was in 1960. And then we took ship. 3 boys plus our Auntie Phyllis, who was our mother figure for a few years. Mm-hmm. And then we were excited, super excited, because there's swimming pools and cinemas and shuffleboard and endless amount of food. And the 3 of us are going to be 10 days on this fantastic ship. And the second day out of Trinidad, Jerry woke up with a spot right here. And they called the ship's doctor, and he looked at it and he says, it's chicken pox, quarantine. And we spent 8 days at the back of the ship above the grinding propellers, locked away in quarantine.
It was probably hot.
It was hot and horrible. And they had to bring the food down to the end of the ship from the dining room. So by the time I got there, it was cold and there's nothing to do. And then when we went to America, we also went by ship. So we got our sea legs.
Mhm. Nicole is asking, what does your mommy issues look like? Is it in the book? I'm so curious.
You gotta read the book. You gotta read the
Gotta
book.
read the book. Gotta read the book. What read the book. All right, Brand. This was a very fascinating conversation.
Well, as
You know,
ever, Kevin, it's always great to talk with you.
yeah, and I read the book, and may I say that you saved the best for last, the best media appearance for last.
I certainly did. I certainly did. Thank you. It's always good to be here. And, just to say, to all the fathers out there in Grenada and beyond, step up, man up, be the father. It's fun. It's not an imposition,
Mhm.
And to all my children and my nephews and nieces and brothers and everybody, mwah, I love you all.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you again. Happy Father's Day to you, sir. Happy Grandfather's Day as well. And thank you. Thank you for uh, your service as a father and as a uncle, as a male figure. But also thank you for your service to the national community.
Thank you very much.
You've not stayed in Jamaica. You came back home to Grenada, and I believe you finally settled in Grenada. So
Building a house right now.
there you go. So thank you again, Brian, for appearing on the program this week.
Thank you. Just a quick thing. I brought 100 copies of this, and I've only got 5 left, so they're really selling like hotcakes. We have more coming. I have more coming. Art and Soul Books has more coming. So in a week's time, we should have, hard copy for the local market.
Excellent. All right, Brian, thank you so very much for appearing on the Bub Report this week.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, Mr. Brian Samuel, author, development consultant, father, grandfather. And for those of you who need to purchase the book, it's of course available on Amazon. And as Brian said, there are few local copies left. So you do want to get your hands on it. Again, I read the book and it was an amazing read. So I encourage all of you to do the same. So viewers and listeners, what we're going to do now is that we will take a quick break. We sat with the Airports Authority, the Grenada Coast Guard, and the air control people there at the Maurice Bishop International Airport, who mounted a miraculous rescue of a pilot and a passenger from a flight that originated in Barcelona, Venezuela, en route to Grenada, that went down in the coastal waters off the coast, 14 miles off the coast of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. So we are going to tee up that conversation. Again, that was a pre-recorded conversation that was held earlier this morning because we wanted to respect the panelists' time because they had previous engagements. So that conversation is not a live conversation. But before I go to the break, I want to shout out a viewer who I met in New York last week. She tells me she is an avid viewer of the Bub Report. And that is Miss Merrill Wise, who is based in New York, but is originally from Grenville in Grenada. We had a very spirited conversation on matters related to my handling of how I interview current government officials with the National Democratic Congress. It was a spirited conversation, but Merrill, I assure you that I took what you said to heart, and we love to hear from you viewers on how we are doing here on the Bub Report. So Merrill is one of those people who reached out to us. So Merrill, happy Sunday to you. I hope you're having a wonderful time and enjoying the weather out there in Brooklyn. Also, as another programming note, viewers and listeners, next week, Sunday, we will be joined on set, virtual set, by the current Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, for an extensive, and I promise it will be an in-depth conversation. It will be an in-depth interview with the Honorable Deacon Mitchell here on the Bub Report next week, Sunday, and that will be from 11 a.m. and not at 10 a.m., originally advertised time slot. So please look out for that conversation. So what we will do now is that we will take a quick break and we will come back and play that pre-recorded segment. Just so you're aware, there was some video quality issues with that segment, so I want to apologize in advance for that. So stand by, viewers and listeners. We will be right back.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG-10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
Very proud of what you're doing, and I think it's much needed. So thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you again for watching the Bub Report. Viewers and listeners, we want to thank you sincerely. Ashley, thank you so very much. Senator Chester Humphrey, welcome to the Bub Report. Mr. Mitchell, welcome to the program. The Honorable Jumani Williams, we call him Jumani, who is the public advocate for the city of New York. The Honorable Baz Diopande, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Pandey, welcome to the Bub Report of Grenada. The Honorable Tobias Clement. Mr. Clement, welcome to the Bub Report. Is it Nicoli or Nikolai? I hope I pronounced it.
Nikolai.
It's Nikolai. Thank you.
Yes.
And welcome to the program, Her Excellency Ambassador Luan Gilchrist. Ms. Randall Robinson, you are here in your private capacity and in your personal capacity. Yesterday, we learned that you were detained by law enforcement in Grenada. So you come from a family of public servants.
Yes, we are a family of public servants.
So you're saying that you have to do more, but my question is, what have you done as President of the Union to ensure that that happens?
To the cards that I have drawn, that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are? Welcome back, viewers and listeners. And so for the second segment of the Bub Report this week, we are joined by the heroic first responders of the Down Piper single-engine aircraft that suffered engine failure approximately 14 miles south of the Maurice Bishop International Airport on Friday. The pilot and crew miraculously survived the crash, and thanks to the quick efforts of the air and sea resources, they were eventually rescued by the crew of the Grenada Coast Guard. We actually call this incident the Miracle on the Caribbean Sea. We welcome our panelists, who is Christina Joseph, the Director of Operations and Acting General Manager of the Grenada Airports Authority, Inspector Dexter Roberts of the Grenada Coast Guard, and Mr. Dennis Filbert, who is the Assistant Manager of Air Traffic Control at the Grenada Airports Authority. Panel, at this time, I wish to welcome you to the Bub Report, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday and your busy schedule to be with us here this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Bo.
Thank you. And
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Ms. Joseph. Good morning, all of you. Now, as I was saying in the lead up to this conversation, there are occasions when there are feel-good stories that we need to highlight in the media. And I felt so touched and so excited by the response of all of you partners in ensuring that we were able to save lives and limb in that crash. Now, I want to begin with you, Mr. Filbert. And of course, I am aware that whenever we have an air traffic incident like this, there are investigations that happen. So I do appreciate that there might not be much that you can speak of. But what I want you to do for us, sir, is to talk to us whenever you receive a Mayday call. What is the protocol that follows?
Okay, so the first thing we do, well, you will have, of course, you'll have to try to ascertain the position of the aircraft, but you also have to inform the rescue services. At the airport, we will be contacting the CFR services at the airport, but also the Grenada Coast Guard. And we will give them the details as to the last position, the persons on board, if you have it. Whatever information you have, you start disseminating. We also have to inform the adjacent units, like the other air traffic service units like Piaco and St. Vincent, Barbados, because they will have to know what's going on in your station so that they don't, send too many flights to you, because basically we'll be closed. Once we declare an emergency, our airport will be closed. If we have traffic, right, so if we have traffic inbound to Grenada, we'll have to inform them, but at the same time, we'll also have to find out the alternate airport so that we can make arrangement just in case they will need to fly to that alternate airport.
So normally what happens, so an emergency is declared, the airport goes into a full lockdown mode in order to accommodate whatever aircraft that is in distress.
Right.
Okay, very well. So in the context of this incident, what time did you receive the Mayday call?
We got the Mayday call at time 12:58. The aircraft was supposed to be landed at 1 minute past 1. That's local time. So just approximately 3 minutes before landing, we got the Mayday call. And the only thing that the tower was able to ascertain from the pilot was that he has lost his engine and may not be able to make it to land, and he is 14 miles out. So we worked on that information.
Okay, all right. And then you worked on, of course, proximity. Of course, I'm sure the pilot would have given you the coordinates of the aircraft at the time.
Well, we knew where he was coming from, so we had a very good idea of where he might be.
And I believe that flight originated from the Palomar International Airport in Margarita. Is that correct?
Actually, it was from Barcelona in Venezuela.
Oh, Barcelona in Venezuela, so even further south.
Yes, a 2-hour flight to Grenada.
Oh, wow. Oh, on a single engine Piper aircraft. That's that's a lot. Okay, let me get in, Ms. Joseph.
Well, that's really unusual. We get it all the time.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know that, because sometimes I think the smaller aircraft doesn't have as much range, but you're educating me here on something I was not even aware
for a long time. For several hours, actually, maybe 5 hours,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ms. Joseph, as the general manager of the Airports Authority, of course, talk to us about the emergency protocols that were activated at the airport. I do know that the Maurice Bishop International Airport, you are in the business of conducting a lot of drills, which you sometimes invite the media to cover. So obviously you're always in a state of readiness for these types of incidents. Of course, what happened on Friday was not a drill. Yes. So talk to us about how you got your resources activated for this declaration of emergency.
Yes. Okay. So what happened is that at Maurice Bishop International Airport, we are guided by our airport emergency plan, which is a document that is regulatory mandated to have. It's a document is a plan that guides our response in the case of emergency. As an airport, we're supposed to be ready. We are mandated to be ready to respond in case of emergency or any type of emergency for that matter. On Friday, once the control tower advised all the management team that there is a distress call, and we declare the full emergency. We have to activate our EOC, which is Emergency Operations Center, as well as the command post. So all the resources go to that kind of readiness mode, and then we roll out the protocols. To activate the Emergency Operations Center, we have to then call all the agencies mutual agencies that have to respond to the emergency. So that would be the Chief Medical Officer Office, the Civil Aviation Authority in Grenada, the airline representative or ground handler, the NADMA, the disaster coordinator, and most importantly, the Royal Grenada Police Force and the various entities, SSU, Coast Guard, traffic, as well as South St. George's Police Station. So everybody, was sent a representative to the EOC, and from that location, we start to coordinate all the various actions that require from the command post. Now, on Friday, we was preparing for a crash at the airport, being that the aircraft was estimated to be landing at 101. And of course, we understand that there was one engine failure. Unfortunately, the pilot did not make it to the airport, and it crashed at sea. So at that point, we then activate what we call the search and rescue element of the emergency response. That would be is normally led by the RGPF, whereby Coast Guard now deployed all the resources at sea with the various agencies, and the emergency response is activated basically.
So was there ever a point that because I do know that in the afternoon you do have major commercial air traffic from North America and Europe and some parts of the Caribbean with Virgin Atlantic and so on. At any point did you have to shut the airport down to air traffic at all?
Yes, but of course, when we declare full emergency, the airfield have to close. The runway is closed because we're giving priority to the aircraft in distress. So then there's a protocol that we issue a NOTAM, a notice to email, where we advise any traffic incoming that there's a full emergency, that is we are responding. So that we have to go to alternate airport. At that point, we have American Airlines en route to Grenada. And what happened that they could go to another airport if they need to land, but they was assisting us actually in the search. So air traffic control get in touch with the airline, American, and they was assisting with the search. Mr. Philbert will be able to elaborate more on how that coordination happens.
And that is something I want to talk about, because I follow FlightAware sometimes when I have relatives flying, and I saw the flight path of that American Airlines aircraft. It went from that from Miami, and I just noticed that once it got to Grenada, it just made all of these shapes, and I'm saying, what is happening here? So Mr. Philbert, certainly you can talk about that. But Inspector Roberts, I want to bring you in here. So you received that emergency call from partners at the Maurice Bishop International Airport. First of all, how far away were you from that impact site of the crash?
Thank you, Dr. Bob. I must say we were here at the Coast Guard base.
Oh, you were at the base, okay.
Exactly. All our assets were here at the base at the time when we received the call from the tower. But what is important to note at this time is that here at the Coast Guard, our motto is we serve to save. And in light of this, we tend to ensure that we have the capacity and the capabilities at the ready to respond to any such incidents. Generally, we respond to a lot of vessels in distress. This aircraft is just the first incident in my career where we had to respond to an aircraft crashing. But we were all here. But our level of readiness, I think, is what propelled us into recovering or rescuing the 2 passengers from the aircraft. We strive to respond to any search and rescue incident within 5 minutes upon receiving that report.
Okay, so within 5 minutes. So, and this is where I'm going to bring Mr. Philbert back here. Gentlemen, if you can talk to us about the role that aircraft played in identifying the specific coordinates of the downed aircraft. Of course, Mr. Philbert knew what the last coordinates of contact were, but it does not necessarily mean that perhaps given, I suppose, ocean tides and things like that, that coordinate would have been the same. So can you talk to us about how you were able to get some of the airlines, like American Airlines, I believe, SVG as well? Can you talk about the air resources that assisted you all in identifying the exact location of the downed aircraft and the pilot and the passenger?
Okay, so we had a general idea as to where the aircraft may be. We in communication with the Emergency Command Center, which Ms. Joseph just spoke about, we also got a coordinate, which I think came from Trinidad. So we informed American Airlines of the aircraft that at that time we considered to probably have ditched, and the pilot agreed to do an aerial search in order to assist. And we were very grateful because, the flight was supposed to land about 1:15, but eventually landed almost an hour after. So he spent about 50 minutes just searching the area. And during that time, SVG Air, which had an aircraft based in Carriacou, they also dispatched this aircraft to the search area. So they were also searching along with American Airlines.
So both aircraft were searching, you said, for more than an hour. And so Inspector Roberts, talk to us about how that aerial search aided in you being able to identify the very specific coordinates of the downed aircraft.
Well, like Mr. Philbert would have alluded to, we would have also been given the coordinates from Trinidad and Tobago, because if you realize the ocean itself is a vast area of emptiness, and it's very difficult for us being in a Coast Guard vessel to see way over the horizon and stuff like that. But what aided us in terms of the rescue was the coordinates that we received from Trinidad. Our Coast Guard vessel were able to input that coordinate into their system, and that would have taken them right to the location where we thought that the vessel was, had ditched in the water. It also boils down to the experience of the Coast Guard team that went out. I think we had one of our most experienced boat driver operating at the time, and he was able to calculate things like wind speed and current, direction of current, and things like that to take him exactly to where he thinks that the persons would be in the water. So it all boils down to training and experience, and I think at the time we had both operating for us or happening for us here at the Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm. What was the total response time from getting that Mayday call to actually identifying and finding the passengers? I'm sure the pilot and the passenger, I'm sure those gentlemen were very happy to see you all.
Of course they were, and they would have given interviews where they would have spoken highly about that. And it's good that today being Father's Day, that we were able to rescue those the two gentlemen, because today there would have been families that would have been sad because the fathers would have been lost, but fortunately that didn't happen. But with regards to deploying the Coast Guard asset to arriving on scene to do the rescue, it was within an hour.
Within 1 hour. Okay.
Yeah, within 1 hour
Okay.
of getting the call and arriving on scene. Yes.
Right. That's pretty quick given the circumstances. I think that's. I mean, I'm not too sure if I see it as a quick response. I don't know if you do. Just given the vastness of the ocean currents, wind patterns, things like that, I think that's very quick. Now, when your crew got to the aircraft, was the aircraft still intact?
No, they didn't see the aircraft. The aircraft would have already sank. So what they saw was the two gentlemen in a little life raft in the water.
Oh, so they did have a life raft. Okay, right.
Yeah, they did.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, very well. All right, and let me bring back Mr. Philbert. Now, you all mentioned Trinidad. Am I correct here in saying that you're referring to the Piarco International Airport when you say you
The
coordinate
area
Trinidad?
control center in Piarco, but also Piarco is the rescue coordination center for our part of the region. So any search and rescue will be coordinated with Piarco.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's normally coordinated with Piarco. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now that makes sense. Now, Mr. Philbert, Inspector Robert said that, of course, this is his the first time in his career that he has experienced something like this. What is it? What about you, Mr. Philbert? I do remember the last crash that occurred in Grenada was back in the 90s. It was also a small aircraft. I can't remember. It was also, it probably was a single engine aircraft as well. That's how far back my memory goes because
Yes.
I am an aviation enthusiast. But were you around for that crash in, I believe it was 1995 or somewhere thereabouts? Or is this the first time for you as well?
I think it was before 1995. It was very early in my career as air traffic controller. I was not on duty on that day, but of course I was quite familiar with the circumstances. And it all played out Friday. It was very, very similar to what happened on Friday. Even with the two people being rescued by the Coast Guard, probably within a few minutes after they would have evacuated the aircraft.
So that aircraft that crashed in the 90s, it did not land at the airport either?
No, it didn't. Actually, on that day, the aircraft was not even coming to Grenada. It was going from Venezuela to St. Vincent. And maybe just after crossing Grenada, the aircraft developed some problems. The pilot lost his instruments, and it was very hazy on that day. So he wasn't sure where he was. He couldn't see land. He couldn't see anything. And we had Caribbean Airlines was coming in from New York with their TriStar. And the tower informed Caribbean Airlines of the situation. And Caribbean did just like what American did. I'm saying Caribbean Airlines, but I mean BWI, sorry.
BWI, it was BWI at the time. I was about to say it was BWI.
Yes, BWI. And BWI did just as what American Airlines did. They did a search, but they spotted the aircraft. And so he was able to guide the pilot to the airport, like give him directions to the airport. But unfortunately, the pilot was already visual with the airport, which means he was seeing the airport, but he ran out of fuel about 1 mile from the runway.
Oh, about 1 mile from the runway. So it did not actually make it to the runway.
No.
We seem to have a very good safety record in the Caribbean, though, when it comes to air disasters. I mean, the other incident I remember was, sadly, it was a tragic Liat crash out of, at that time, it was the Arnarsville Airport in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But outside of those two incidents in Grenada and the one in St. Vincent, I can't recall any major air incident in the region. Can you?
We have quite a few. Not in Grenada. That's the only two that we had, and they were not fatal, thankfully.
Right.
But with the other islands, I don't think would say the same as us. You know, there have been quite a few from time to time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is good to know. That is good to know. Ms. Joseph, I want to bring you back here. And I of course, the carnival season is coming up. Air traffic will be increasing. I do know that you are in the process at the airport of doing expansion and renovation. Can you tell us what the progress is like there? I know that perhaps a jet bridge would be coming soon, so that we no longer have to face the elements in case it's raining when we disembark at the MBIA. How is that looking at the airport now?
Yes, but we at Morris Beach will be ready. We are like every year, we are preparing for our peak season, which is July, August, and Carnival is the driver of that inflow of passengers. The jet bridges are not going to be ready for this season, unfortunately. They are in Grenada, but the still infrastructure preparation is ongoing. We anticipate that the bridges are going to be installed late December 2023. So they will be ready for use in 2024. However, we are, making sure, doing training, ensuring that our staff manpower, the staffing levels are adequate, equipments are maintained and serviced, so we can, provide the best service to our passengers during the peak season.
Okay, very well.
I said we're having a JetBlue will be operating a very early flight from 2 a.m. to 3 in the morning. So it's a very challenging for us, but we are preparing to accommodate, to facilitate that early flight, as well as there will be, we have our daily flights, American Airlines, JetBlue, Virgin Atlantic, that will be twice a week, as well as British Airways. Caribbean Airlines also is implementing some flights to facilitate the Toronto route, Canada, because as you know, Air Canada is not flying during this summer season. So we anticipating a very busy season, and we are getting ready for it. Thank you.
The jet bridge, once that jet bridge is finally installed, how will that improve the flow of passengers, outbound and inbound passengers into the airport? And how would that assist the staff in making it a much more seamless experience for them as well?
Okay, definitely the jet bridges, it will be 2 that we are going to install at the moment. We're going to facilitate a quick disembarking and also embarkation and disembarkation. It will assist the ground handlers and the operators with the, let's say, the passengers with reduced mobility with wheelchairs. That would be an easier, faster access, as well as you say, the protection for from the elements as well.
Absolutely. And Inspector, let me bring you back here, sir. And this we're going to just talk about, so the 2 gentlemen, how are they doing? Did they get? I saw the report on the Government Information Service. Well done, report there. But how are the gentlemen doing? I know they got medical attention. Are they okay otherwise?
Yes, they are in fine spirits. As a matter of fact, I've been with them yesterday, and
yes,
they are in contact with the ambassador, the Venezuelan ambassador who is here. So the Venezuelan national is being taken care of through that. Plus the Italian national, through the Foreign Affairs Department, they reach out to to the various embassies, and they're taking care of of him from that end. But generally, they're in good spirit. They're in good spirit, and they're doing well.
Absolutely. And finally, sir, well, quickly, we'll come to a wrap up here shortly. But of course, the Grenada Coast Guard is not only involved in search and rescue, but you're also involved in patrolling the territorial waters of Grenada. In recent times, we've been hearing a lot about an increase in the traffic of illicit drugs, and Grenada as one of those transshipment channels. How has the Coast Guard been dealing with those challenges? How have you been ensuring that you maintain that vigilance to protect the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martinique?
Well, I must say that border security is a main issue for us here at the Coast Guard. And in recent times, with regards to the illicit movement of drugs, especially the marijuana trade from St. Vincent, we have had great successes in terms of putting a dent in that operation. If you were to come here at our base and look in the yard, you would find a number of vessels that have been seized as a result of operation that Coast Guard would have carried out in conjunction with other regional entities and plus departments within the RGPF itself. So we've had some great successes in recent times with regards to stemming the flow of illicit drugs coming into Grenada, and we are resolute in our fight with regards to that. We remain vigilant, and we tend to operate at a state of readiness so that whatever they call, whether it be illegal drugs or search and rescue, we should have the capacity and the capability to respond to ensure that the shores of Grenada are protected at all times.
Have you been seeing outside of the flow from St. Vincent and the Grenadines into Grenada and perhaps other islands as well? Have you been seeing different patterns? In my research and reading, it is found that that there are now a lot of increasing drug flow from the Caribbean to Europe, to places like the Netherlands and to places like Portugal and Spain. Have you been seeing, at least in the context of Grenada, and of course, perhaps you can speak to the region as well, we know that, for example, Martinique and Guadeloupe are now hotspots in that respect, which some have said has contributed to the increase in crime in St. Lucia. But have you been seeing a change in pattern where we are concerned?
I have not seen, based on my my operational data, we haven't really seen a dramatic change in terms of pattern wise for Grenada. Grenada is still being used as that transshipment point, but you more find the drugs coming in through yachts and stuff like that, and then making their way up the chain through to Florida and maybe to Europe, as you would have spoken about. But we have not seen any dramatic changes in terms of the pattern wise with regards to the transshipment of drugs to or through the Atlantic.
Right. I have a curiosity. You mentioned yachts. Are yachts in open waters subject to random searches?
Yes.
Or am I putting you on the spot here?
No. They are. Maritime law speaks to that. So take, for example, there is a yacht that is registered here in Grenada, and we meet them on the open waters, right? We as a law enforcement Coast Guard entity, we can search them, right? Vessels that are flagged or registered to other countries, if we as a Coast Guard encounter them out there on the water, let's say in open waters or on the high seas, what can be done in instances like that is we can ask permission from that state to board that vessel and do our searches and stuff like that. So they're not immune from searches, but they're just that there are channels, a certain aspect of the law that has to be in order for us to do that.
Right. Are there probable cause rules? In law enforcement, you hear about probable cause. Would there be a probable cause, let's say, for a particular vessel that might be of interest to the Coast Guard, that you can then say, look, we need to conduct a search here?
Well, of course, if we were to encounter a vessel out there, and when we do what is called our initial safety inspection, which means that we will go up close to the vessel and observe it, see where it's coming from, what direction it is coming from, what direction it is heading. We look on the vessel itself to see if there is any suspicious crew movement, if there are any markings that are out of order. We look and see what sort of a cargo maybe that are on deck and stuff like that. So once there is something that raises our suspicion level, then it's somewhat like probable cause. So then that will give us the the reason to do maybe a further more in-depth interrogation of the vessel.
What about human trafficking? Is that something that you see a lot of? I mean, in the Northern Islands, the St. Kitts, for example, they interdicted Haitian nationals on a ship that was stranded a couple of months ago. Do you see those occurrences in our territorial waters?
Well, from the Coast Guard's perspective, we haven't encountered hardly any at all with regards to human trafficking in terms of via the maritime environment. Immigration may have more data with regards to that, because they deal with that. So I can't really speak too much with regards to what it's like for human smuggling here in Grenada. But our encounters out there in the maritime environment is basically nil, somewhat, more or less,
Okay. All right. Very well. All right. So what we want to do is to offer the panel some closing comments. So Mr. Philbert, I want to begin with you, sir. Or actually, no, ladies first. Yes, even though it's Father's Day. Ms. Joseph, let us begin with you for some closing comments. And thank you again for agreeing to appear on such short notice on the program. But over to you for some closing comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bob, for allowing us to be part of this presentation, to be able to explain, how we do what we are mandated to do, to safeguard, to ensure the safety of aircraft operations here in Grenada as part of our regulatory mandate. Just allow me to just for information to clarify there was a question that you posed to the panel about how the coordinates are established, the location or the exact location of the vessel. And just to add that in accordance to ICAO, that's the International Civil Aviation Regulation, an aircraft must be equipped with what we call an emergency transmitter locator. And once they hit, the impact, that sends communication, satellite communication to the Area Control Center, which is PRCO, and establish the exact location of the aircraft. That coordinate then transferred to our local coordination center for search and rescue, which is Coast Guard, the Grenada Coast Guard, and that is the way we was able to dispatch our resources, to the exact location where the aircraft should have been, crashed. And that is that regard. But then overall, as you say, closing remarks, we want to thank all the agencies that, they remains ready and on standby to provide the support to us, for us at an airport. We have to be ready for respond to such kind of emergencies. And we cannot do it without the contribution of our mutual aid agents, like the medical services, the police, the Coast Guard, adjacent airport, Aerodrome, Civil Aviation Authority. Also, our traffic controllers that play a very vital role, very crucial role in that initial communication with the pilots, in distress, as well as our civil, our Ministry of Civil Aviation and the National NADMA. They also, assist us with all the coordination, with all the resources, locally and regionally, to be able to, to get this necessary support, so we can activate our response. So thank you.
Ms. Joseph, thank you very much. Christina Joseph, who is the general manager, the acting general manager of the Grenada Airports Authority. Mr. Philbert, over to you for some closing comments, sir.
Okay, I just want to assure the aviation community as well as the general public that we in the Air Traffic Services Department at Maurice Bishop International Airport, we are always on our guard. We always constantly do training. We do a lot of simulation of emergencies and so on, because we know that it could happen anytime without any warning. So we always want to be prepared. So we always do that. It's like stipulated actually that we do this every now and again. I also want to, express my appreciation for the guys on duty that day. I have had emergencies myself, and sometimes you work on auto when it happens. When you get the information, everything just flows. But when you leave the environment and you go home, it hits you. And sometimes you can't sleep for a while. You have to wonder if you did everything correct. So it doesn't just end when the emergency is over. Maybe that's when years start. So I just want to commend the guys. I think they did a very good job on that day. And I couldn't praise them anymore. I've been in touch with them afterwards. They were basically, we talk about it like sort of counseling, and they were in good spirits.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is a mental health component here. And perhaps it can come down to survivor's guilt. But I do remember, for example, after the 9/11 incidents in the United States, or even after that incident in the Canary Islands, where you had a tragic collision of two commercial aircraft, that you hear about that impact that the air traffic controllers have. What could I have done more in that situation? Could I have done more to save lives in that situation? So that's a very important point you bring up there that I never even considered until you referenced it. Yes,
it do happen. Even there are times when controllers go in depression. There are even times when you hear that not within our region, but you hear controllers committing suicide after, based on the outcome of the event. So yeah, it does affect you afterwards.
Absolutely. Mr. Filbert, thank you, and thank you to the air traffic controllers there at the Maurice Bishop International Airport for your service and for your good work, sir. Maybe you need to write a book on on those experiences before you go into retirement or after you retire.
Thank you very much. I'll think about it.
Yes, absolutely. And Inspector Roberts, thank you again, sir, for availing yourself as well. I know that at the Grenada Coast Guard, you are on the ready. And so I close over to you for some closing comments.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bob, for having me on here and for putting the Coast Guard in the spotlight. For far too often the Coast Guard are the Coast Guard officers are the unsung heroes, but we are not doing it for recognition or for like, as people would say, but we are dedicated and we love what we do at the Coast Guard. It's just that this incident would have trusted us into the limelight, and I'm not going to take the opportunity to let the public know that there are many other search and rescue incidents that the Coast Guard do that basically go unnoticed. We save lives almost every day, and just as far as close as maybe last week, Thursday, we were engaged in an operation where, while towing a yacht, the yacht sank, and that could have been a dangerous situation for the Coast Guard vessel and the men themselves. So the Coast Guard, we put our lives, in danger every day. We go out in environments and conditions that other vessels would not even go in, because persons are out there and they need rescuing, and we are committed to that. So I just want to let the public know that the Coast Guard is here. Don't only think about us as running down the drug operators as they normally would say. We do that too. That's part of our mission. But our main focus is on saving lives, and we do quite a bit of that. So we're going to remain focused. We're going to remain vigilant as always, so that whenever we get a call, whatever it is, whether it be vessels or aircraft, we can have that ability to respond within that short space of time, so that persons' lives can be saved out there. So thank you, Dr. Bob, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I as I said at the intro, we have to highlight positive stories as well. Sometimes the news, it's like a parasite. You gravitate towards the things that are negative, the things that are salacious and scandalous. But this is a positive story that could have ended much worse, And so, as you said, on the occasion of Father's Day, we have, I suspect both gentlemen are dads. So
yeah,
they have their children. Are they granddads as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, but you have two dads whose children are even happier to have them around following that incident. And we have to highlight when we do things positive as a country, when our agencies do things positive as a country, we have to highlight and celebrate those, because we have a tendency to be hard on our own, be hard on our own people. But when we do something positive like that, we really have to highlight it and celebrate it. So, our panel, thank you again for appearing on the Bub Report this week.
Thank you.
All right, viewers and listeners, that was Mr. Dennis Filbert, Ms. Christina Joseph, and Inspector Dexter Roberts of the Grenada Coast Guard and the Grenada Airports Authority Air Control and Operations, who were part of the multi-agency team, in addition to the pilot and crew of American Airlines, at least the pilots of American Airlines, as well as the pilots of SVG Air, and all of the other partners in Grenada who mounted a team effort to save 2 lives following the crash of a single-engine Piper aircraft. We were informed that that Piper aircraft actually originated from Barcelona in Venezuela en route to Grenada before losing contact 14 miles south of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. We call this the miracle on the Caribbean Sea. So, viewers and listeners, on behalf of our hardworking producers, I want to thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode of the Bub Report. We will see you next week. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. Happy Father's Day to all dads, and thank you for joining us.